Thank you. Hello, everybody. So my name is Ivana, and I will present our country report that was actually done with Professor Mila Jelalia, who is the actual expert for this area. So I will present the situation in Croatia. We actually, listening to your presentations and discussing, we actually had a problem with this non-formal and informal qualification because they don't exist in Croatian system. And listening to Jan, presentation, we saw some similarities with Czech Republic, so I hope the presentation will be useful. So I will start with the historical background of national qualification framework in Croatia, then a few words about national qualification framework and the act of it, then qualifications which are included in the NQF and the quality assurance of them, and then how these non-formal qualifications, which actually do not exist, are understood, and what are the financial procedures regarding their inclusion in NQF. So a national qualification framework in Croatia was actually officially commenced in March 2006 by the Ministry of Science, Education and Sport formed the committee that will develop the framework and the law and the whole procedure. So the baseline of the Croatian qualification framework to the government for adoption was proposed at the beginning of 2007, and in July was adopted. In September of 2007, the National Committee for the Development of the NQF was established, and the whole set of the documents were developed within the process, including all key stakeholders. So the National Committee for the Implementation of NQF, later promoting the National Council for Development of Human Potential, was established in May 2010. And there is a web page with all the qualifications and the work of this body. So it also has the English version, so maybe it will be useful for some of us to check it. The Croatian qualification framework is a platform for coordination and integration of all key stakeholders in the qualification system in Croatia. So the members of the labor market, all of the institutions on all levels of education were included, and so they exchanged the needs, the ideas, and introduced a set of criteria, creating the basis for acceptable transparency, access progression, and the whole process connected with the NQF. And the validation of non-formal and informal learning is defined by the law on the NQF and specific bylaws that are actually developing. They are still in the process, and it's supposed to be done in probably 2018. So the process is still going. It's not finished completely, and there will be more work on it. So according to legislation, all institutions at all levels can organize non-formal learning. Educational institutions, including higher education institutions, can develop their programs for validation, and only after the evaluation of the programs, only for validation, institution can implement it. There are some additional requirements for to institution in order to register comparing to usual programs. For example, there supposed to be a professional who would do the validation of a certain program. So what's the rationale for implementation of NQF? The Croatian qualification framework has been developed for efficient communication between stakeholders as a reflection and classification of the present system, including the description of old qualification and facilitation for recognition of foreign qualification. It is also present to motivate authorities in the national qualification system to influence reforms, improving objectives of education and training, promoting the full use of learning outcomes, application of comprehensive quality assurance system, and the development of validation and of non-formal and informal learning. It is the basis for understanding the existing qualifications and their interrelations, and for the development of new qualification standards. The comprehensive systematization of qualifications to include all the quality assured qualifications that are individual may have acquired, regardless the way of learning. So that can be so-called informal or non-formal way of learning, but not the qualification. A stronger link is created between the labor market, the formal education system, and the validation of normal and non-formal and informal learning. Okay. Based on the Croatian education tradition, the current conditions and the level of development of the society, the national QF in Croatia was set up to fit the needs of the economy of the individuals and the society as a whole. So it incorporates the provisions of the European qualification framework, EU guidelines, recommendations, and keeping with the foreign policy of the Republic of Croatia. It is the unified system that allows for learning outcomes to be measured and compared. So the Croatian education system, this formal one, has several levels, and they of course interfere, and they have each level is the learning outcomes and qualifications after each level are recognized by the Croatian QF. So what qualifications may be included in the system? All of the types of qualifications. So higher education, all levels of higher education, vocational education and training, general education. So all of them are recognized by the CRO-QF, and both classes of qualifications. So the CRO-QF recognizes the full qualification and partial qualification. So the partial qualifications serve for special purposes. They can be major and minor, additional, and so there are different types of the partial qualifications, and they can be achieved by independent way of learning. But each of these way of learning has to be quality assured. So after that, the qualification has the equal value, and the ways of learning can be formal, through this structure that I showed you at the beginning, on the slide before, and the non-formal and informal way of learning, which has to be quality assured and certified. There are no restrictions regarding the type of qualification that may be included in the NQF, only requirements for implementation of the quality assurance process. So validation of non-formal and informal learning is based on the equal value principle, so there is no non-formal or informal qualifications, but only qualifications. So how certain qualification may be included in the system? It is also regulated by the CRO-QF. So there is a process that certain institution or organization has to follow, prescribed by the law. So there are programs that are validated by the quality assurance bodies. These are the quality assurance agencies, separated for each sector: higher education, vocational education trainings, and general education. So there is a prescribed form for the submission of qualification standards to the register, and it has to be done. Submission has to be done to the Ministry of Science, Education and Sport in electronic form, and after that the sector council has to do the validation. and registration by the minister. If relevant for some qualification standards, it is necessary to register also occupational standards. And qualification standards are further the base for design and validation of concrete program for achievement of qualification, which is validated by the quality assurance agency by using those standards. So procedure and form for qualification standards are defined by the QF Act and the decree on the QF register, design and submission and validation and registration. So the whole process is well described, and based on the registered qualification standards, registered institution can apply concrete programs for achievement of qualifications. All elements of in the qualification standards must be fulfilled, and they are then validated by the quality assurance agencies. So sometimes maybe there can be confusion between the quality assurance agencies and the awarding bodies, because sometimes they are not the same, but for example, higher education can be also awarding body, and as well the quality assurance body. So there are three agencies that also check the quality of the programs of the higher education. They are different for educational sectors. The higher education, vocational and training, and adult education and general education. So institutions responsible for the quality assurance of non-formal sector play a main role for external quality assurance of education and training, including curricular development, assessment, and awarding of qualifications, and as well with the sector councils. There are 25 sectors and one cross-sectoral or interdisciplinary sector council. They are advisory and professional bodies ensuring that the development of human potential is in line with labor market needs that with each sector, right? So the National Council for Development of Human Potential is the central strategic body of the QF. And I will go back to these higher education institutions. They also have their internal quality assurance and also external, which is done by the Agency for Science and Higher Education, which that represents the external quality assurance. So quality assurance of qualifications in QF, there are differences if in charging for governmental institutions and non-governmental institutions or private. So if individual wants to validate their qualifications, the responsibility validation of qualification standards, responsibility belongs to Sector Council, National Committee and Minister, and it is free of charge. But for validation of proposed programs, including institutions according qualification standards, responsibility is on quality assurance bodies or agencies, and for private institutions, they have to pay the fee for the quality assurance. What are the organizational and financial procedures regarding inclusion of non-formal qualifications? So, to introduce the qualifications in the QF, any of these institutions can apply. Higher education institutions, schools, associations, chambers, and so on. And these non-formal qualifications, as they are understood in Croatia, they are different than in other countries. So we don't have this. We don't have non-formal sector qualifications in the QF. There are just qualifications which learning outcomes can be achieved by different types of learning: formal, non-formal, and informal learning, including relevant assessment. So it is, if it is by non-formal and informal learning, it is up to individual student if there is a respective program for validation, registered institution, to go through the process of validation. So it depends on the individual if that person is interested in such a thing. And procedure is the same for all types of the qualifications. Leveling of qualifications by validation is very simple. According to learning outcomes specified in the program for validation, which is related to that specific qualification or qualification standard. It is, as I said, explained by the Croatian QF law and as well 2 bylaws. For the concrete qualification, there are 2 parts of the design validation registration. First, standard for each qualification, quality assurance standards, key learning outcomes, assessment criteria, and minimum credits, and so on, plus occupational standards only if relevant. And second, programs for achievement of qualifications. For example, study programs can integrate validation of non-formal and informal learning for all of the for all or some units of learning outcomes, which are designed, validated, and registered according to specific qualification standards. And qualification standards are validated by sector council, which I already mentioned. There are 25 of them. So there is only non-formal and informal learning, and validation of non-formal and informal learning to achieve to achieve the full qualification or part of it. As I already mentioned, financing is free of charge for individual if there is a public ownership of the qualification standards, such as these state institutions. But for registration of programs for achievement, also programs which can integrate validation of non-formal and informal learning for all or only some units of learning outcomes for private institutions can be charged by quality assurance agencies. And I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much for your attention.
You have a question for Croatia?
No, just a comment to say this, that if you have also any comments regarding what you have said, we also invited you on the website, gave the email address, so you can contact us after the conference as well.
Yes.